So Dolphins wide receiver Tyreek Hill suffered an injury so bad on Monday Night Football that there's a legitimate chance he will never play another snap in the NFL. I mean, this is just an awful loss for the Dolphins, who did end up winning the game that nobody really cared to watch in primetime anyway. However, that was far from the only crazy thing that happened during this past week of games. There were sadly more season-ending injuries, crazy upsets, another walk-off blocked field goal, and so much more. And in today's video, I'll dive into the biggest takeaways of each game from week 4 of the NFL season right after. Alright, so week 4 of the NFL season featured some more insane finishes, some blowouts, devastating injuries of course, sadly, and a whole lot more. So let's get right into it, starting with the game that took place over in Dublin, Ireland. It was mostly a pro-Steelers crowd, and they had a lot to cheer for as they went up 24-6 at one point and were in complete control. The Vikings rattled off 2 touchdowns in the 4th and actually had a chance to march down the field and tie it with a field goal though, but they turned the ball over on downs and Pittsburgh escaped with the win 24-21. Aaron Rodgers was getting the ball out quick, very quick in fact, as he had an average time to throw of 2.17 seconds, which was his quickest average time to throw in a game since 2016. Jaylen Warren was ruled out with a knee injury, but his backup Kenneth Gainwell filled in admirably with 134 yards from scrimmage and 2 touchdowns. DK Metcalf also turned a short pass into an 80-yard score, electric, and the defense sacked Carson Wentz 6 times, which makes this the second time in 4 games that the Vikings have allowed 6 sacks. A lot of that had to do with the fact that they were already without left guard Donovan Jackson. Then their center Ryan Kelly suffered a concussion during the game, and their right tackle Brian O'Neill went down with a knee injury. It's an MCL sprain, so not season-ending, but he could miss some time, maybe a few weeks. Thankfully, the Vikings have a bye in week 6, so he'll have some extra time to get healthy. The Steelers also lost Jalen Ramsey to a hamstring, and this is pretty wild, but in the first quarter, Ramsey faked a hamstring injury during this touchdown return celebration off of a fumble that was eventually called back, but he was grabbing at his left hammy before trolling Justin Jefferson with a gritty of his own. However, later in the game, guess what? Ramsey actually injured his left hamstring. You can't even make this stuff up. Thankfully, the Steelers have a bye this week, but still, the word is that Ramsey is expected to miss at least several games, as is wide receiver Calvin Austin, who injured his shoulder during the game. As for the Vikings, they're actually staying overseas and will be playing the Browns in London on Sunday, and depending on the status of their banged-up O-line, they might be in for another long day against a very good Cleveland Browns defensive line, a line that held the Lions to 277 yards of offense on Sunday, although it really didn't matter because Joe Flacco couldn't stop turning the ball over. 2 picks and a fumble lost, which the Lions turned into 17 points. Then a punt return for a touchdown on top of that made it impossible for the Browns to hang around in this one. Goff didn't have the craziest of stat lines, but didn't really need to. He connected with Amon-Ra St. Brown for 2 touchdowns, though, and that's now 6 scores for St. Brown in the last 3 games. And he unsurprisingly leads the league in receiving touchdowns. For the Browns, it's got to be encouraging to see the emergence of Quinshawn Judkins. He topped 100 scrimmage yards and scored a touchdown for the 2nd week in a row, but it may be time to get another rookie in there, a quarterback specifically, like, I don't know, Dylan Gabriel maybe, because Joe's age appears to be catching up to him quite a bit, and he has not gotten off to a great start this season. For what it's worth, they did just make a trade for offensive tackle Cam Robinson from the Texans, which helps a little bit after they lost Juan Jones to a season-ending knee injury. But this team needs more help than that, because right now it's looking like another long, maybe even losing season for the 1-3 Browns. The New York Giants finally got in the win column after they shockingly upset the Chargers in Jackson Dart's NFL debut. The young rookie flashed his talent, throwing and rushing for a score as the Giants ran the ball a whopping 42 times. That's a lot. There wasn't a lot of downfield completions for Dart, and he did take 5 sacks, but the touchdowns were big, and he didn't turn the ball over, which can't be said for Justin Herbert, pretty surprisingly. Dexter Lawrence nearly had a big man touchdown after batting Herbert's pass to himself here. Then Drew Phillips came up with the other one in the secondary. The Chargers probably would win this game 9 times out of 10 if you ran it back 9 more times, but the 2 picks and then 14 penalties really hurt them. The Giants hung on in the end to win 21-18, but sadly the injury to Malik Nabers kind of overshadows much excitement at all of this victory. Nabers officially tore his ACL in his right knee while trying to go up and get a ball, and he'll be out for the remainder of the 2025 NFL season. Sadly, it's yet another injury to a star player on that awful MetLife turf field. These are just some of the ACL and Achilles tears suffered on that field since 2020. You can see here up on the screen. I don't think I need to explain how huge of a loss Malik Nabers is for them either, but it leaves Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton as their top pass catchers for now. Solid players in their own right, but Nabers was approaching elite receiver territory, so I do wish the best for him in his recovery. I also want to wish the best for Giants owner John Mara, who in a statement on Monday announced that he's been diagnosed with cancer. He said he's feeling optimistic as he's undergoing treatment, but just wanted to make mention of that and wish him the best as well. The Chargers had a big injury too, as tackle Joe Alt was carted off with an ankle injury, and while it sounds like he'll avoid IR, there's a chance he's still likely going to miss some time. Maybe a few weeks, tough to know right now, but it's an ankle sprain and a big blow, especially with Rashawn Slater out for the year as well. That Chargers O-line is pretty jacked up right now, and Justin Herbert, I believe, is the most hit quarterback in the NFL through 4 weeks of the season. I think he got hit something like 14 times week 4 and 14 times week 3, so it's not looking good for the Chargers after a very strong start. Next up, you know how last week was filled with blocked field goals? 2 in the Rams and Eagles game, 1 in the Bucs and Jets game, then the Packers and Browns 2. Well, they were a week late, but the Bears showed up to the block party on Sunday against the Raiders. Daniel Carlson was lining up for a 54-yard game winner, but Josh Blackwell came flying off the edge and made the diving block to secure the win for Chicago, 25-24. It was yet another ugly game for Geno Smith, who threw 3 interceptions and now leads the entire league with 7 on the year. The silver lining, a little bit of pun there to their colors for the Raiders, is that Ashton Jeanty had one heck of a breakout game. After being held to under 65 yards in his first 3 outings, Jeanty exploded for 138 and a touchdown on the ground while also scoring 2 receiving touchdowns to complete the hat trick. So that's encouraging, I guess, although he did lose a fumble, and the Bears defense has now forced 4 turnovers for the second game in a row. Caleb Williams led an impressive fourth quarter drive to take a late lead, and despite throwing a pick to Max Crosby and the team having just 2 first half rushing yards, that's an insane stat, they found a way to win and advance to 2-2 as they stay alive in the very crowded NFC North. We'll get to the Packers game later on, but before that, I wanted to mention a few more games that went down to the wire. I know Colts receiver Adonai Mitchell has to be sick. Gutted. I mean, this is kind of embarrassing, but he cost the Colts not 1, but 2 touchdowns in their loss to the Rams. In the third quarter, he made this difficult contested catch, then spun his way free for a walk-in touchdown. Very impressive play there, but he tried to showboat a little too early and let go of the football through the back of the end zone, which resulted in a touchback, Rams ball. Then with 2.5 minutes left in the game and the score tied up, Jonathan Taylor got loose for this 48-yard touchdown run that would have put them up 7. However, Adonai Mitchell was flagged for a holding penalty, and instead of 7 points, the Colts ended up having to punt. And on the very first play of the Rams' next drive, Stafford hit Tutu Atwell wide open for an 88-yard touchdown to put them up 7. That's the longest touchdown of Stafford's 17-year career, by the way, and it came at the perfect time. The Colts had over 1 minute and 20 seconds plus all 3 timeouts to work with after that, but Daniel Jones threw his second pick of the day, and it was Cam Curl who got both INTs for the Rams. So shout out to him for a great game, and shout out to Puka Nacua, who had a monster day. 13 catches for 170 yards and a touchdown. Just unreal stuff from the former 5th-round pick who leads the NFL in receiving yards and is currently on pace for over 2,100. That is insane. Don't think he's going to keep pace with that. But I do know that both the Rams and Colts are now 3-1, with LA being in a 3-way tie for their division, while the Colts are now sharing a lead of the AFC South with the Jags after their big win on Sunday. Jacksonville forced 4 San Francisco turnovers, including the strip sack by the former Niner Eric Armstead in the final minutes of the game, which put the stamp on this one. Jacksonville leads the league in turnovers with 13 after they had just 9 all of last year, which is pretty impressive. Parker Washington also housed a punt return, the first time Jacksonville's done that in 8 seasons, so that was huge. Offensively, they took care of the ball with no turnovers, and they continue to run it well as Travis Etienne topped 100 yards for the second time this season. He's had a great bounce back year so far, currently in 3rd in rushing yards and is averaging a career-high 6.1 yards per carry through 4 games. Brock Purdy threw for over 300 yards in his first game back from his toe injury, but he had 2 picks and that fumble at the end, which ultimately cost them the game. And just an FYI here, Brock Purdy, I think, re-aggravated his toe in some capacity, so we'll see if he plays next week or not, or Mac Jones gets the start, and then one of their wide receivers, Ricky Pearsall, is dealing with the knee injury himself and might not be playing in their next game either. I also need to note that tempers were flaring after this game between Jags coach Liam Cohen, Mr. Duval himself, and 49ers defensive coordinator Robert Saleh. If you weren't aware, during a press conference last week leading up to the game, Saleh gave the Jags coaching staff a bit of a backhanded compliment, saying that they're really good at legal sign stealing and knowing what the opponent is going to run based on the signals from the sideline. Well, Cohen didn't take too kindly to that because they were seen in a bit of a shouting match after the game, with Cohen reportedly saying to Saleh, "Keep my name out of your mouth," to which Saleh may or may not have responded saying, "I will mess your world up." I can't confirm that. That's what has been said. I'm not a great lip reader myself, but I tried watching the video to see. Either way, Saleh didn't like it and would absolutely demolish Mr. Duval, okay? The whole interaction was hilarious, though, and in the end, Cohen does get the last laugh as his team is the one that picked up the W. The Eagles get to keep laughing, too, as they're now the only 4-0 team left in the NFC. They picked up right where they left off last week because on the first possession of the game, they blocked Tampa's punt with Sidney Brown scooping it and taking it 35 yards to pay dirt. Yeah, this game got out of hand pretty quickly as the Eagles took a 24-6 lead into halftime. But Jalen Hurts was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde because in the first half, he was 15 of 16 for 130 yards and 2 touchdowns, yet in the second half, this man was 0 for 8. No yards, no touchdowns, none of that. Although, he has gone 241 regular season pass attempts in a row without throwing a pick, and that's the longest active streak in the NFL right now. Tampa actually did get back into this game, though, and they had the ball down 8 with 6 minutes left in the fourth quarter. Baker picked up a couple firsts, and it looked like Baker magic was in full effect. After all, he's had 3 fourth quarter comebacks heading into this game through 3 weeks in the NFL season. But a sack pushed them back, and they ended up turning it over on downs, with Philly icing it on the other end and taking a safety in effort to drain the clock. So they won it 31-25. By the way, that final play was pretty crazy because the punter ran backwards and lost 34 yards, which was actually deducted from their rushing total. So they finished with 88 rushing yards instead of 122, and that kept Tampa's streak of holding teams under 100 yards alive. It's now at 12 games in a row. It kind of counts, but we know how it got there, so it's a bit of a fluky streak right now. Either way, maybe they deserve it for limiting Saquon Barkley to just 43 yards. That's his new lowest total since joining the Eagles after he had his previous low last week. Their running back, though, talking about the Bucs, Bucky Irving, is who many are keeping an eye on now after he suffered an apparently bad ankle injury in the loss and could be in jeopardy of missing some time. Todd Bowles said Monday that Bucky is among the injured players he was concerned about, so who knows at this point? I don't like that the head coach of the team said that's a concern for him. He might miss more time than we think, but hopefully it's not season ending. Anyway, with that, the Eagles get another W and are rolling, and so were the Patriots when they curb stomped the Panthers 42-13 on Sunday. Last week, they turned the ball over 5 times against the Steelers. This time around, they were turnover free and went 4 for 4 in the red zone with an 87-yard punt return touchdown to boot. Drake May was super efficient, completing 14 of 17 passes for 203 yards and 2 touchdowns, while adding another on the ground and even hitting the Cam Newton Superman celebration afterwards. Patriots. Pretty much everything was going right for them this week as they moved to 2-2, though they have their biggest test yet as they travel to Buffalo for a Sunday night matchup against the Bills. Good luck with that. Speaking of Buffalo, they moved to 4-0 after handling the Saints at home, though it was a little closer than some people thought, at least until the fourth quarter when the Bills started to pull away and finished the job winning 31-19. While the win wasn't as glamorous as some may have thought coming into it, a win is a win, and the Bills have put up at least 30 points in every game so far this season. They actually made quite a bit of history in this game as they tied their regular season home winning streak, 14 wins at home in a row. So if they beat the Patriots this upcoming Sunday, they'll set a new team record. Josh Allen had 2 passing TDs and 1 rushing touchdown in this one. That's the 45th time he's had a passing and a rushing TD in a game, tying Cam Newton for the record. So he'll probably break that one within the next few games. And then James Cook did break one on Sunday when he rushed for a touchdown in his 8th consecutive game, and that breaks the franchise record. Next up, the Texans finally got their first win of the season after they shut out the Tennessee Titans 26-0. Not great, okay? But Cam Ward kept it 100 when speaking with the media after the game, being brutally honest.
I mean, we keeping the buck right now, we ass. So we 0-4. We have, this point, we got nothing to lose. We dropped a quarter of our games, and we've yet to do anything. So we have to lock in.
Well, he's not lying either. They put up a total of 175 yards on offense. Again, not great. They gave up 26 points to a team that was averaging 12 per game. Not great. And are now 0-4 on the year. Not great. On the other hand, the Texans offense had their best game by far. CJ Stroud was 22 of 28 for 233 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's his best performance in quite some time, and quite possibly the most encouraging part of this win was the emergence of their 4th-round rookie running back, Woody Marks. For the first time this season, he got more touches than the veteran Nick Chubb, 21 to be exact, which he turned into 119 yards from scrimmage and 2 touchdowns, 1 rushing, and 1 receiving, with the one on the ground being pretty nasty as he made a great cut on the play. Joe Mixon still has no timeline for a return, and Nick Chubb isn't exactly a spring chicken, okay? So if Marks can continue to make his mark, then that will bode well for this Texans offense. I mentioned this earlier when talking about the Browns, but they did trade tackle Cam Robinson to Cleveland for a late-round pick swap, and not gonna lie, but this looks like a bit of an L for the team here. They signed him to a 1-year, $14.5 million deal in the offseason, then benched him in week 1 and have not played this man since. They basically paid him $9.4 million for 1 game, then traded him. And this is coming off the heels of them eating dead money just to release C.J. Gardner-Johnson, another guy they brought in during the offseason. Well, losing depth along that O-line is not really what they need right now, but it's possible he was disgruntled after being benched, and this could have been a move to improve the locker room, kind of like the release of C.J. Gardner-Johnson. But moving on, the Marcus Mariota-led Commanders fell short to the Falcons on Sunday as Jaden Daniels missed his 2nd game with a sprained knee, and Terry McLaurin was also absent with a quad injury. Atlanta was in control of this one throughout as they held the lead from their very first possession and never looked back. Eventually, they had a 15-point advantage going into the 4th, and they were able to hang on for the dub, 34-27. Bijan Robinson was fantastic. No surprise there, but he had a career-high 180 yards from scrimmage and a rushing touchdown. Drake London had his best game of the season as well, with 110 yards and a score. And aside from 1 pick, Michael Penix did an excellent job in this game with 313 yards and 2 tutties. He was getting the ball out quick and was 13 for 13 on passes of 10 yards or less, with 180 yards and both touchdowns coming from those types of throws. It was a great bounce-back game for the offense after getting shut out by the Panthers last Sunday. I believe the score was 30-0. Yikes. They actually have a bye week this week, while the Commanders have a tough one on the road against the Chargers, so hopefully Jaden Daniels is back by then, though it sounds like Scary Terry could miss more time. Now, before I get to the game of the week, Cowboys, Packers, I of course have to mention that the Chiefs molly-whopped the Ravens at Arrowhead. Patrick Mahomes threw 4 touchdowns for the first time since the middle of the 2023 NFL season, and the defense pressured Lamar Jackson on nearly 50% of his dropbacks, forcing him into a pick and a fumble, as well as 3 sacks. They also held the starters to just 13 points when the Ravens came into this game as the number 1 scoring offense, averaging 37 points per game through the first 3 weeks of the season. Unfortunately, Lamar did leave the game near the end of the third quarter with a hamstring injury, and while we don't know exactly how severe it is at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if he misses a game, maybe two, but we will see. Some people think he's completely faking it, but I do think this is a legitimate injury. That was far from their only injury too, by the way, because Roquan Smith, Marlon Humphrey, Nate Wiggins, and Ronnie Stanley all left the game and did not return. And that's not to mention the other players that were injured heading into this game and not playing. So not only are the Ravens 1-3, but they could be without even more starters on both sides of the ball. The Ravens are having the year from hell, and it could quickly spiral out of control if they fall to 1-4 or 1-5, as they've got the Texans and Rams up for the next two games. I do break this game down in much more detail on my main channel if you want to check it out, but we've got to get to the game that everybody was talking about, which is, of course, the return of Micah Parsons as a Green Bay Packer to take on the Dallas Cowboys on Sunday Night Football. And while Micah did generate 10 pressures on the night, he didn't get home until he kind of sort of did in overtime. You'll see what I mean. But this game was bonkers throughout. The Packers were going to go up 14-0, but their extra point got blocked and returned for a score, so that instead made it 13-2. At one point, there were 6 consecutive touchdowns scored by both teams, a little bit of touchdown ping pong, and all of them were lead changing. That was until Brandon McManus drilled a 53-yard field goal to send them to overtime. The Cowboys got the ball first and got down to the Packers' 4-yard line where Dak Prescott looked like he was going to run in for a touchdown, but Micah Parsons came flying in from behind. He got Dak at the line of scrimmage for no gain, but it was technically registered as a sack. I'll let you be the judge of that. Regardless, it was a massive play in the game because the Packers failed to score a touchdown on the other end, and while they almost messed up the clock management, they were able to kick a field goal with 1 second left to end this game in a tie. 40-40. One of the most anticlimactic things I've ever seen, especially for how great that game was. Maybe not from a defensive perspective, but it was an absolute shootout and was very entertaining to say the least. Both quarterbacks were pretty lights out. Jordan Love was 31 of 43 for 337 yards and 3 touchdowns. Dak was similar, 31 of 40 for 319 yards and 3 touchdowns himself. Again, pretty similar stat lines, and even their running backs, their main bell cows, were similar. Josh Jacobs had 86 yards and 2 touchdowns, while Javonte Williams had 85 yards for 1. George Pickens was a monster, filling in for the injured CeeDee Lamb very nicely. This man had 8 catches for 134 yards and 2 touchdowns. Then, Romeo Doubs had himself a hat trick, catching 3 touchdown passes from Jordan Love. A pretty insane game through and through. It was actually the highest scoring tie in the Super Bowl era. The Cowboys, though, are now 2-1 with a couple of cupcake games against the Jets and Panthers coming up. They should win those in theory. Meanwhile, the Packers are 2-1-1, and they've also got a very winnable game against the Bengals on the docket, especially with Joe Burrow out on injured reserve. And then there were 2 Monday Night Football games that went down. Don't really love how they stack the games. I would prefer like 6:30 and 9:30 like they did a couple weeks ago, but I digress. These 2 games were against the Dolphins and Jets, who asked for this game, by the way, and then the Broncos and the Bengals. The story of the night for these games, though, really wasn't the outcome of said games. Instead, it was Tyreek Hill's potential career-ending injury. Early in the third quarter, Tyreek caught a pass along the sideline, but his leg planted awkwardly when being tackled out of bounds, and it gave way, pointed in the wrong direction, and it was just awful. You could tell right away this was a severe injury. The cart immediately came out and they placed his leg in an air cast. And this dude must have been flowing with adrenaline because he was actually smiling, cheering, thanking the crowd as they applauded him, and even was joking around with his teammates before being taken off the field. Shortly after the game, it was confirmed that Tyreek Hill dislocated his knee, and with that usually comes significant ligament damage. Well, it's been confirmed that he tore multiple ligaments, including his ACL. So on top of the ACL, this could also include MCL, LCL, PCL, or worst case, all of them. This was confirmed overnight, by the way, as he was rushed to the hospital, where he is still right now and will be undergoing surgery today. And it's just one surgery of several that he's going to need. Now, some people, including Dr. Jeff Mueller, a doctor of physical therapy, believes that this could be a career-threatening injury for Tyreek. It's not really surprising. Tyreek is 31 and he's probably going to miss all of next year, not being able to return until the following season, where he's going to be 32, close to 33 years old. So yeah, there is a chance that Tyreek never plays football again. It's highly unlikely he's anywhere close to the player he was before this injury, even if he can return, because what separated Tyreek Hill was his freakishly crazy, once-in-a-generation speed and agility in his route running. Now, there has been a player that has returned from something this devastating, a skilled position player. That was actually Nick Chubb. This happened to him in 2015 or so, but the guy was 10 years younger than Tyreek Hill and didn't depend again on once-in-a-generation speed in his route running. So I'm not really sure here. I wish the best for Tyreek, but this is an awful, devastating injury, and he could have very well played his last snap in the NFL last night. Now, as far as the game went, I think Tyreek's positive attitude after that injury actually helped the team just as a whole not get too shaken up about it, and Miami remained in control of this game throughout. Jets running back Braylon Allen fumbled on the opening drive when it looked like he had a sure touchdown. What sucks about Allen is, on top of the fumble, he was ruled out with a knee injury after taking a hit and could be seen walking gingerly to the locker room, ruled out for the rest of the game. Meanwhile, the Dolphins held on to a 2-score lead for most of the second half, and even though they made it interesting with a late touchdown to Garrett Wilson, he's a dog by the way, Miami held on 27-21 and got their first win of the season while sending the Jets to 0-4. Justin Fields had a wild, almost 50-yard scramble for a touchdown on fourth down. That was probably the most exciting thing that I've seen in some time from a quarterback, and Garrett Wilson's touchdown grab was nasty, but Darren Waller caught 2 touchdowns in his Dolphins debut, including one over the top of Sauce Gardner, of all people. Sauce, after the game, was also complaining about the officiating, and that's how you know the team is not in a good place. Back to Miami real quick. Devon Achane ran for a yard shy of 100 with a touchdown of his own, and honestly, the Jets could have maybe won this game if not for 3 fumbles, 13 penalties, 11 missed tackles, plus they were over 2 in the red zone, so that makes it pretty hard to win. This is an undisciplined, bad football team, okay? After the game, Aaron Glenn, their head coach, could reportedly be heard yelling at all his players in the locker room, probably telling them just that, you guys suck, and I don't blame him, because that was a gross performance. Now, this also falls on the head coach. He is far from not having any blame here, but this was awful. And whoever came up with the idea of having a game between the Jets and Dolphins on Monday Night Football should be fired immediately and never allowed to work for the NFL ever again. The next game wasn't any better, but I don't blame the NFL for thinking it could have been a good matchup between the Joe Burrow-led Bengals and the Sean Payton-led Broncos. But no, instead it was yet another bloodbath, a borderline televised scrimmage, a mere practice for Denver at home. Cincy's offense was shut down again, held to just 3 points, with Jamar Chase being limited to 5 catches for 22 yards, and even going up to Zach Taylor at one point like, hey man, get me the football. They were outgained 512 yards to 159. Yeah, you heard that right. No typo there. It was pure domination as Bo Nix threw for over 300 yards with J.K. Dobbins topping 100 on the ground. Jake Browning could get absolutely nothing going, and their run game was putrid. Once again, they're averaging 49 rushing yards per game, which is dead last in the NFL. Well, they're now 0-2 this year with Jake Browning as the starter, and in these 2 games without Burrow, they've been outscored 76-13. This is not a well put together football team, guys. Like, I get the fact that any team that loses their QB1 will struggle for sure, but look at a team like the Vikings over the last couple of years with all their injuries in the quarterback room, the shuffle, and they still were able to hang on in a lot of these games and even make it to the playoffs. Now, yeah, they lost in the wild card round here, but it's just a big difference between a team that's well-ran and a team that is not. The defense is a train wreck. The O-line is awful, but hey, at least they have 2 very expensive wide receivers to throw passes to, even though the quarterback doesn't have time for them to get open because the O-line leaks like a sieve. It doesn't get any better either because since he has the Lions, Packers, and Steelers up next, which means there is a very real possibility that they drop to 2-5 after starting out 0-2. Meanwhile, the Broncos, they moved to 2-2 and 2-0 at home, with their 2 losses being by a combined 4 points. They have a tough matchup against the Eagles next, but then their schedule softens up a bit here before their Week 11 matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs, which will be a big game for both of those teams. Anyway, let me know your biggest takeaways from this wild week of football down in the comments below, and with that, I'll see y'all next time.